Back New York last week. It was fabulous. I hardly know that some of the words seem just too ordinary to use. It was a wonderful class. The land was beautiful and so receptive, and the students were amazing. There were 14, 15 of us total with me. And we spent time with the trees at the lake and the fish in the lake and there were little creepy crawlers everywhere because it's spring and everything was in bloom. We had hawks and eagles come in. We had some dogs come in person and do Reiki with the group. We did some Zoom Reiki with Robin and with Sue, so that was really fun. Because distance Reiki for animal Reiki is a thing. So I definitely wanted to be able to teach that there too. So that, and then we got to, everybody stays on campus and kind of eats together and talks. And yeah, it was really, really nice. It was very, I would say I came home very rejuvenated and inspired. Yeah. So, okay. Oh, and just in case, I also have an animal Reiki masterclass in Rhinebeck in Omega in September. So, and then we have an in-person one here in Oregon, up at Welch's by Mount Hood on the Salmon River.
Those Pacific Northwest forests that you see so much about. We will be in the
Growth
heart,
trees.
in the
Yeah,
heart of it.
yeah.
Although they're a different experience in the summer than they are that you see on social media, because it's always the moody version of it. But in the summer, it is just absolutely stunning as well. Very lush.
Mhm.
So,
Well, seriously, because you guys have done so many of the journeys with us, when we're going over the Bridge of Light and the light is shining on the waters and it's sparkling light and sparkling waters, there's a bridge in, this is called Wildwood, and where we're going, and there's a bridge, and that is where I'm always envisioning the sparkling water on the river. So, because it just sparkles. So, anyway, all right, Robin, I said I wouldn't keep going. So, here we go.
well, what we were talking about with Colleen, I know I started the recording kind of after she introduced what she was talking about, is she was just giving an update about her animal Reiki class last week in at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. So we were just catching up a little bit. So welcome back, Colleen. We are glad to have you.
Yeah, that's right. I wasn't here last week.
No, you were.
Yeah.
So what we are talking about in June, last month we did kind of the energetic aspects of what happens after you take Reiki classes. And this month we're going into the practical side. We're going to start with Reiki 1 and 2. So what happens after you take a Reiki 1 and 2, you are now qualified to be a Reiki practitioner, and many people afterwards are like, okay, so now what? What do I do here? I got out of class. I had amazing experiences. I loved this, but I don't know where to go from here. And so that's what we'll be talking about for the month of June. And we're going to be talking about a lot of different aspects of that and the practical sides of that. Now, many of you here are maybe even Reiki teachers, experienced Reiki masters, Reiki teachers. So we know that you might have already gone through this process. But one of the good things for you with this is it's always nice to hear some of these things again, just because it's helpful to support your students. But we also have people in this circle and those that you listen on the recordings that are brand new to Reiki and have just taken a Reiki 1 and 2 and have come to this circle because they are looking for community, they're looking for practice. Many of you may not have an interest in being a professional Reiki practitioner, but it's also helpful to hear some of these, tips and tricks and some of the things that we'll be sharing about, just because you never know what's coming down the line, first of all. But second of all, maybe there's a reason that you are tuned to Reiki, such as volunteering, such as working with animals, such as working with your family and friends and supporting them in different ways. So it's always helpful for that as well. However, we will also be talking about some of the practical business applications of after you've taken a Reiki 1 and 2 class and you are a new Reiki practitioner. So that's where we're going for the month of June, maybe even longer. We're listening around that. We're listening about what comes through in these next, 4 weeks with it. And if there is more to talk about after that as well. So that's TBD, to be determined with it. All right. So I do want to say that one of the biggest questions that we have, that we get, and that we know that people are needing help in their confidence around is confidence in sessions. So I do want to say that we are going to be covering that in depth next week. So, how to go through a session, the different aspects of sessions, and we want that to be its own full week. So we are going to be talking about that next week. There are a few things that we know that people do. I'm just going to cover it briefly. That we come out of a Reiki 1 and 2 class and they need help in their confidence with practicing sessions. And so things like practicing the hand positions with how do I do the hand positions, things like that. And like I said, we'll be going more in depth next week, but I just wanted to touch on it briefly. So that is one of the things that you can be experiencing after coming out of a Reiki 1 and 2. Like, how do I do a session? Where do I start? What's the order? Like, I know we went through this in my class, but I don't remember, and I don't remember with the hand positions. Well, first of all, one of the things that you can do is that you can just start practicing in a low pressure environment, because we've all been there. We've all been in that place where you are trying to figure out all of the things that you learned, remember all of the things that you learned. And so if you're able to practice on friends or or family members, that is a really good place to start, to just start. That is a really important thing. Not everything's going to be perfect, and you are going to come out of a class and, not exactly remember every single thing. That's normal. We all did that. We were all there. Um, so don't feel like you're alone in that. Like, oh, everybody else gets it and I don't. Don't feel like you're alone in that. That practice helps with that. If you're able to do animals, that can be helpful. Just getting used to that flow of Reiki, just getting used to those sessions, and even that idea of some hand positions. They might be a little different with animals. Also, not all animals like hands-on Reiki, but you don't have to take the animal Reiki courses to practice with animals. You can just offer them Reiki, and just getting that starting that flow can be helpful with your confidence. You can work on wild animals, things like that. Some of some of your kids might want Reiki, and so you can practice on kids, especially littles. Teenagers, not always the easiest. Some of them are with this stuff, but not all of them. And so if you have littles, that can be a place that you can start as well, just to start with that practice time. And then also, we know that many people come to this circle straight out of Reiki 1 and 2, and going to Reiki shares are a really helpful place to practice, because you're in supportive community, in a place where if you're brand new, everybody who has been here has been brand new at some point. And so it's a very encouraging, very supportive aspect of the Reiki community is going to a Reiki share. If you have an in-person Reiki share, in your area, that would be a very great place as well. So you can get that in-person practice. So both things can be very helpful just to get started. And then another thing that you can do, because the hand positions and remembering that, the symbols, things like that, those are those other things that can feel a bit overwhelming at first. And so create cheat sheets, especially if you're in a low pressure environment with that practice aspect. Create cheat sheets. You can put a hand position poster on your wall. Reiki.org sells those. You could have the manuals you could have open. However, you have to turn the pages, so sometimes that can be a little challenging. But if you could create a cheat sheet where it's just like on a one piece of paper, that's something you can do. Also, if you need to reference the symbols again, that might be something you could keep in a little journal, have them drawn in a little journal so that it's easily closable if you don't share the symbols. But again, if you're practicing on a friend, you're like, okay, hold on, I've got to check the hand position. Hold on, I've got to check um the symbol one more time. Like those are those times that gives you permission to do so. So that is a really helpful way to start if possible. And same with a Reiki share. Like if you're here, good thing is if you're practicing in a breakout room, you can just have your video off. But if you're in a Reiki share in person, you can also bring a little journal with a cheat sheet. Trust me, like all of us are very supportive of that. Like, oh, yes, I totally get that. And good for you. Like, way to get out there, way to put yourself out there, because that's not always the easiest. We totally understand. And like anything that I can do to support you, I'm happy to do that. So that again, being in that supportive community. So just a cheat sheet can be super helpful as well for that session aspect. And again, we're going to go more into depth with that next week. So there are other things though that can be a part of this process. Um, and one of the big things is how to talk about Reiki. And just even getting comfortable doing so. That can be a bit of a hurdle for us to overcome after we come out of Reiki classes. Again, being in supportive community, that goes without saying. But that part does get easier. And one of the things that you can do is you can have an elevator pitch with that. Is you can memorize a 1 to 2 line thing about what Reiki is. And then if people ask more in depth, you can have, a longer explanation of that. On Reiki Lifestyle, a we do have an elevator pitch cheat sheet. So it's just a one sheet. It has 3 different kinds of elevator pitches. It has a very short one. Reiki is a Japanese stress reduction technique. It has like a longer one that explains it just more in depth. It's, a short paragraph. And then, sorry, I have to just there we go. And then we also have one that has more of a scientific or medical explanation towards it. Many people come into Reiki 1 and 2 because they want to volunteer, either in a medical setting, or they want to volunteer like at a shelter or something like that. So it's helpful to have a bit more of that medical aspect of, oh, it's an integrative therapy, things like that. And so you can find those on our website. It is under the resources tab, and you just find it under free downloads. And so you can memorize those. And one of the things that's helpful with that is just really going more into your experience of what Reiki is rather than going into this trying to convince people. Because one of the things you'll find is that some people are going to ask more questions and other people are going to go, oh, okay, and then just drop it. And even still, even now, this many years later, you still will have that experience. And if they drop it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm not trying to convince you. I don't need to go further into it. But then other people will be like, oh, what's that? And then ask more questions. Or they'll be like, oh, yeah, I had a cousin that does that, or had a cousin that talked about that, or, something like that, somebody that they know that has done it. And then that opens the door for you to talk about it and just talking about your experience of your class, of how when you've gotten a session, how relaxed it made you feel or healing that has come up for you. So really bringing it to that as well. If you know that they are a person that might have a viewpoint of it that needs to be more from like that medical or scientific perspective of it, you can look up the different places that it is offered. It's offered in hospitals. They have research on it through, the double-blind placebo-controlled studies, that there has shown an effect of it for people after surgery and through breast cancer treatment and things like that. And so you can also have that part of it memorized to a degree, and you don't necessarily have to have the exact studies, but just know that you can explain it from that way as well. They're using it in hospitals. There's research on it. It's shown effectiveness in this. So you can kind of have both of those things to be able to talk about it. And to be honest, it's one of those things that in the beginning, you might have to go into your memorization of how you want to answer the question, because that is one of the challenging parts when you're first starting. It can feel a little bit like you're stumbling through it, but just like we might have done in any of our other ways that we have work or jobs or school or any of those kinds of things. Yeah, maybe at first you need to memorize it a little bit, but then you do get more comfortable talking about it over time and know that that part does come. Um, and then again, you can also use those elevator pitches. That's why we have them, because it is one of the things that can be challenging coming out of your class. So that's another place that can be a little uncomfortable. Okay, so what do I do? How do I talk about it? One of the things that you can do also is if you have metaphysical fairs by you, those places are places that people are talking about these things. A lot of times yoga, these are places that people are talking about these subjects. And so it is also about finding your people. You're going to feel a lot less you're going to feel a lot more comfortable talking about it in where people know about energy healing or different aspects of these modalities, when they know a degree of them, they know about them, even if they haven't heard of Reiki, they might have heard of sound healing. They might have heard of, even acupuncture or Qigong or Tai Chi, some of those kinds of things where it is talking about moving energy within our bodies and in our biofields or our auric fields. So those are also places that you can kind of connect into around it. So, as far as some of the other aspects of it, so we have those two things that are a challenge when you come out. But also, we have some of the very practical applications around it. So, how do I let people know that I have an offering, that I am now a practitioner? How do I set up my space? How do I do scheduling? These are all things. What are my offerings? These are all things that are a part of how you do need to come out, because it's just like anything else. That are is a part of a 21st century business practice, that you do have these things so people know what to expect. Like there is a level of professionalism that people expect with a service offering. You are in the service industry, just like you have an expectation if you want to book a massage, or if you have an expectation if you want to book a haircut or an acupuncture treatment. There are certain protocols that those people use that we also use in Reiki. So the first thing is, what are your offerings? How long do you offer sessions? What are your prices? what does a Reiki session include? So those are things that, you do have to spend a little bit of time to think about that. Also write it down for even just for yourself. So if you run into somebody that you want to offer a session to, or is asking for a session, that you already have that aspect prepared. It can be a little overwhelming to create a website at first, so I'll talk a little bit about that. But at least if you have an idea of what your services are and what they include, then that is going to be helpful for you explaining it. It's also going to be helpful for you if people want to contact you. You can just have an email at first and they can contact you. Um, so that's an aspect. One of the things that you can do is you can look up established practitioners. Now, don't directly copy them, but it is helpful to get an idea of what your prices are. That's one thing too. That's a common question. I'll come back around to that. But what your prices are, how do you word what people offer? What's within your scope of practice? Because many established practitioners have a variety of skills that they have trained in other modalities that you're not necessarily trained in. So how do you adapt some of the things that they might have said um, to what your actual services are? And like if you have only trained in Reiki, you are a Reiki practitioner. But that is another thing. But you might also have training in other places. And so can you combine those in your Reiki sessions? Absolutely. So that is another thing that you want to make sure that you are providing so that people know what to expect. So get clear on your service offerings, go to other people's websites to see what they're saying. Definitely make it your own. You're your own person. You have your own voice, your own perception, and perspective. And it's what people are looking for. That is important that you have your own voice in this. But it's also okay to be like, okay, now what do Colleen and Robyn say about this and Danny say about this as far as their sessions are concerned? What's their description and things like that. So that's one thing. Your prices. So one of the things to know is that coming out of Reiki 1 and 2 and wanting to establish a practitioner practice is that you're going to want to price your sessions accurately. So one of the things that people do is they have their price. Okay, it's I'm going to just use the round number of $100 a session. And that session is for an hour session. Maybe an hour and a half session is more. Let's say it's, 125 or something like that. You also can bundle sessions. So it's a package of 3 sessions. If you are needing to do introductory offerings to gain more clients, that would be a way to gain more clients. Okay, for my first 5 clients, sessions are 50% off. So I'm doing sessions for $50. Or here is a free 15-minute consultation call or a 20-minute sessions for $20. There's a lot of ways that people are doing introductory offerings, discounting sessions in order to gain more clients. And that's a really good way to get your name out there as far as, what you might offer in your area. Also, you're going to want to look up what comparable prices are in your area. Somebody who lives in, rural Kansas is going to have a very different price point than somebody that lives in Manhattan. And so somebody that lives in Manhattan has to price their sessions fairly in comparison to somebody that lives in an area that the cost of living is a lot lower. And that's just a reality of different places that we might live that are more or less expensive to live in. So look up places around you and what people are charging. And if you don't have Reiki practitioners in your area, look up massage or acupuncture services like that to gauge what your prices might be. So there's that. Now, as far as a website, things like that, you don't have to have a website, first of all. You should have an email. You can create a free Gmail. That's pretty easy. And you can also just start with a Facebook page. And if you start with a Facebook page, it's at least a place where people can go and contact you and get a hold of you. And so it's an easy way to start. Even if it's just your name, Reiki, that's fine. You can start with that unless you're very inspired and you come up with a business name. Down the road, you can create a website. I think we're talking about more of those kinds of aspects in a couple of weeks. So I'm not going to go into depth with that. But you can just create an easy website on Wix or Squarespace. There are website makers out there that you can do. And actually, there's some AI website makers now that are actually pretty good. So you can just Google those things and see what you're most comfortable with as far as how to use it. Some of them are more or less user friendly, and it also depends on your tech skills. But some of them are relatively easy. But if you need to, start with a Facebook, start with a an email, and just get into the creativity with it, so that people have a place that they can communicate with you. Then we also have the scheduling aspect. You have a full-time job most likely at this point, or or you're the full-time job of being like your house manager, or caregiver for your children or something like that. So the scheduling can be a part of it. That can be hard to get into the flow. And so, what you can do to start with this is even just start taking clients once a week. Maybe it's a Saturday morning, or maybe it's a Thursday evening or something like that. Start taking clients. One of the things that many of us do in the beginning is that we try to accommodate the client and what they are able to do. And, that's understandable at first, but what's more comfortable is like, here's my schedule and you can, book when you're free. And a lot of times you have to start where you can start, and then you start that schedule months down the road. Like, I wouldn't be able to just go out and say like, okay, now every Saturday morning I'm able to take clients like right now, because for me, I have kid and sports and all of these things, and that it wouldn't be easy for me to do in this moment. But what I can do is I can go out into September and block that time off and start then, and in the meantime just do what I can do in order to get things scheduled for now. So there might be a need to be some flexibility in the beginning, but if you start months out and kind of work backwards, that can be easier, so that you can start to get on a consistent schedule, because it can feel really chaotic if you don't have a plan. But we also know that there's realities of life, and the plan might need to start down the road. And that can be true with teaching too, but we're not going to get into that right here. I know for me, I block out time. I live by my Apple Calendar. Some people are their planners, and the written calendars, however that works for you. But you do need to be able to offer up times for availability to your clients. So there's that. So whether that's a scheduling app, it also like a Calendly, you can have a certain level of Calendly for free. Acuity is another one that you can use. Those are scheduling apps so that people can just go and book the time that you have. And the neat thing is if you start out in the future, you can start with one day, and then maybe you can do 2 days a week after work, or however that works for you. So there's that. And then also just making sure that you're communicating boundaries as well, that's a part of it. You have your professional boundaries. Clients sometimes push for extra time, extra support outside of the session. I mean, we all want to support our clients. So some of that stuff this is not cut and dry. We of course offer support to our clients. It's not like, okay, well, we're here and that's it. I mean, we're in a heart-led practice. We're in a heart-led business and industry. But also, you do have to know that you do have to set professional boundaries. You know that your massage is an hour. and you're not really getting more time than that. It's not to say sometimes that doesn't happen. Your haircut is an hour to an hour and a half. For some of us, it's longer. But that is a part of, you're not pushing for more boundaries. Giving professional boundaries is actually supporting your energy, because you're not having to make those decisions. Like when you have policies set, you're not having to make those decisions for every single person differently every time. There things that end up unfair to some, so there's those things that can kind of take that energy, that if we set those policies and those boundaries, then it helps us, and it also helps for your clients' growth. And also within that, cancellation policies, rescheduling policies, those kinds of things are all a part of this to really start thinking about. I will say, like, when you're in the beginning, you're just trying to start. It's okay if you don't have all of this figured it out right away. You don't need to have all of this set up right away. Just start taking one step at a time. These are just some of those things that you want to be thinking about, and kind of take one step and then the next and then the next. And then the other thing to say is that we all have learning experiences through this. As practitioners, we're not going to be perfect. We might make a mistake. We might have a learning experience where maybe we didn't have um, the approach to a situation that in the future we would have. And we have all had those learning experiences, and just kind of chalk it up to that. And next time, if it's a mistake or something, just do it differently next time. That is the learning curve with anything. That's a learning curve with a new job. That's a learning curve with learning anything new. Like, that is a part of what just happens. As long as you are staying within ethics and integrity, know that some of those things, I mean, I definitely have not stayed within my boundaries, and I've, had growth from that and learning curves from that. Um, and it just know that it happens, and that's okay too. So just start taking one step at a time, check these things off of a list. And you will get there too. It doesn't have to be done all at one time. Then the other thing that we have is, what about a healing space? Because that part can be a little challenging, because renting a space may not be realistic at first. So, how do you go about that? Well, you can offer them out of your home. You can offer them even if you're in like your living room at first. Um, you can do distance. We're going to get into that just a little bit in a moment at first. There's a lot of different ways. Some places you can rent by, like, a couple of hours. So if you want to just rent for a couple of hours on, a Saturday or a Thursday evening or something like that, you can do that. So you can look up places. There can be places that are unexpected too, as far as who will rent their space to you. So don't just think that it has to be a very, like, just the spa in your area, or just the massage place in your area. A lot of times it is those places that do that kind of thing. But we've heard of all sorts of places that do that. Gyms that have like an extra room. I've heard of a conference room, like off of a building that was somebody rented for a little bit of time for a space. So there can be also unexpected places that you can rent, but you can start in your home. Not everybody's going to have a room that they're going to be able to dedicate to it, but you could do it in your living room at first. The big thing to know is that, you do want to have a space that's comfortable. If you are doing it in your living room, making sure that not other people are there. Obviously, we want to make sure that we are having privacy with people, confidentiality with people, making sure that our spaces are clean, that they're inviting, that they feel a sense of privacy. That's another thing that can be important to people. And so preparing yourself, it doesn't have to be Like it's this perfectly curated space. A lot of it is showing up with intention. A lot of it is, you know, bringing in that energy and making it inviting from that aspect. Now, I mean, it can't be a disaster, like obviously nobody wants to walk into a disaster to have a session, but it doesn't have to be this perfectly curated space. So just you have to start somewhere with it. Also, if you don't have a table right away, you can do chair Reiki. There's some of those options as well. If it's a nice day and you can find a kind of more private place in like a park or something like that, I've heard people do that with a chair or a table, either way. Few things with your space. Please be very conscious of fragrances. I know I'm highly sensitive to fragrances, allergic to some. So laundry detergents, even candles, being aware of essential oils. Some people are sensitive to especially certain essential oils, being aware of that as well. Now, not all of them, and a light essential oil is definitely different than a laundry detergent or a perfume, but also incense, things like that. Just be very aware when in the energy healing spaces. There's a lot of people that are really sensitive to fragrances with it. So there's that. Also, asking your client their preferences or allergies. Do you have cat allergies? I have a cat, things like that that you need to be thinking of as far as like your intake forms and things like that. We're going to be talking about some of those things down the road as well. But it's just this idea that you have a consistent healing space somewhere that you can offer that people can come into to receive a session. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time to find, and that's okay too. You might need to do a little bit of research and talking to people, which that's not a bad thing either, because that helps you to get your name out there that you're offering Reiki sessions. I'm kind of a shy person. And so I know this can be hard. I know that I've, written and talked about imposter syndrome. That can be challenging. All of those things, you can use Reiki to help you in those energetic spaces of it, help you with your voice, help you with your confidence, help you with your imposter syndrome, empowering you, writing down your goals, giving those and your intentions, your manifestations, giving those Reiki to really help you connect with people in your community if you can. All of those things can be really, really helpful as you are starting out. And then, of course, the other thing that you have is distance Reiki. So some of these things are a little bit easier with distance Reiki. Your online communication needs to be a little bit better, rather than maybe your local networking. So your online communication, that's where you would maybe put your focus into. And then you can do sessions on Zoom. That's how Colleen and I do them. It's how Danny does them. She does some in person as well. So she's hybrid. But you can absolutely do your sessions on Zoom and start that way. And as you all well know that are here, you can also practice on Zoom and really work with that. Work with the hand positions with a surrogate, have your hand positions up on your screen, the symbols up on your screen, work with your confidence, things like that in these spaces. And say everything else is the same. Letting people know your sessions, letting people know all of those kinds of things. Social media, it's going to be important. We're going to talk about that down the road as well. But that's another aspect of it is distance Reiki can be helpful as well. And so much of what I already talked about, other than the in-person stuff, you can extrapolate to a distance healing practice or distance healing session also. And for us, when we say distance sessions, most of the time we're talking about these live kind of real-time sessions where we're actually talking to people. I do video on Zoom. Colleen does phone on Zoom. That's all preference. So that's kind of what we are talking about when we're talking about distance sessions. Okay, I think that's enough for today. Colleen has a really neat exercise for everybody. It's a lot of information. always. We could talk about this for forever. But I think, getting into the energy work and having that support us also is really helpful. Colleen, do you have anything you want to add before?
Well, that was just really good.
Okay. All right.
I was listening, just going, wow. And then, it was giving me ideas of, oh yeah, we want to add this on, on another week and this and that. So, um, but with what Robin also just said, one of the main things when you've taken a Reiki class is also self-Reiki. And so using self-Reiki, it's another place that you can understand the hand positions. We actually have a hand position chart, self-Reiki hand position chart on our website, also under the free downloads and the resources where the elevator pitches are. So then also with some of the questions that you have, it's one of the reasons that we teach the Reiki journey techniques that we have here. So every week we've been doing different Reiki journeys, and this is truly what we do to discover our own personal practices, decision making, course writing, everything that we do these journeys. So, however long ago we started inviting you to do automatic writing, you can do that or not. But also during this series, talking about it, we're definitely going to go into some really specific questions, probably more next week than this week, that you may want to be able to journal with. Whenever I am journaling, whenever we are working together journaling, we start with using Reiki, self Reiki, and then we go into the journaling. So that's what we're going to do today. So today is going to be more about helping you to understand your vision, um, and what that might look like, and and every vision for each one of you is the right vision for you. There's no shoulds in Reiki. Like, you can use Reiki solely for yourself. You can want to spread it with and have a full practice and everything in between. So, and then we're going to take a little bit of time with what your obstacles are. And so you can look at those. But I will tell you, you can write these answers to these kinds of questions, just like sit down and write it. But when you go into Reiki and sit down and write it and answer these questions, you get a whole different level of answers. So that's what we're going to do next. And we also invite you to use these practices like this when you are doing this on your own. You can do this on the fly. You don't have to make it like a whole long thing. You can just do it on the fly too.